Hello, BookTube. Well, we come to it at last. We come to the end of our buddy read of Mr. Scarborough's Family by Anthony Trollope. His last great novel, a novel that he serialized, as he did with all of his novels, but did not live to see in book form. Uh, I have done spotty on again, off again read alouds on this channel because this is not just a buddy read. We are reading this together. We're talking about it, debating over some of the points of it, which is wonderful. That has been absolutely wonderful. But I'm also reading the book to you, word for word, or as close to it as possible, with one legendarily excerpted chapter. And we are now at the last chapter of the book. Trollope's long leave-taking of his cast of characters ends with this chapter, the last of Florence Mountjoy. Now at last in this chapter has to be told the fate of Florence Mountjoy, as far as can be told in these volumes. It was, at any rate, her peculiarity to attach to herself by bonds which could not easily be severed those who had once been thought that they might be able to win her love. An attempt has been made to show how firm and determined were the affections of Harry Ainsley, and how absolutely he trusted in her word that when once it had been given to him. He had seemed to think that, when she had even nodded to him in answer to his assertion that he desired her to be his wife, all his trouble regarded her heart had been off his mind. There might be infinite trouble as to time, as to 10 years, 3 years, or even 1 year, trouble in inducing her to promise that she would become his wife in opposition to her mother, but he felt sure that she would never be the wife of anyone else. How he had at last succeeded in mitigating the opposition of her mother, so as to make the 3 years or even the 1 year appear to himself an altogether impossible delay, the reader already knows. How he at last contrived to have his own way altogether, so that Florence, as Florence told him, she was merely a ball in his hand, the reader will also know very shortly. But not a shade of doubt had ever clouded Harry's mind as to his eventual success, since she had nodded at him at Mrs. Armitage's ball. Though this girl's love had been so grand a thing as to have achieved, he was quite sure that from that moment that it would be his forever. With Mountjoy Scarborough there had never come such a moment, and never could. Yet he had been very confident, so that he had lived on the assurance that such a moment could come. And the self-deportment natural to her had been such that he had shown his assurance. He never would have succeeded, but he should not the less love her sincerely. And when the time came for him to think that he should do with himself, those few days after his father's death, he turned to her as his one prospect for salvation. If his cousin Florence would be good to him, all might yet be well. He had come by that time to lose his assurance. He had recognized Harry Ainsley as his enemy, as had been told often enough in these pages. Harry was to him a hateful stumbling block, and he had not been quite as sure of her fidelity to another as Harry had been sure of it to himself. Tretton might prevail. Trettons do so often prevail. And the girl's mother was all on his side. So he had gone to Cheltenham, true as the needle to the pole, to try his luck yet once again. He had gone to Cheltenham, and there had found Harry Ainsley. All hopes for him were over then, and he started at once for Monaco, or, as he told himself, for the devil. Among the lovers of Florence, some memory may attach itself to poor Hugh Anderson, the attaché at the embassy in Brussels. He, too, had been absolutely true to Florence. From the hour in which he first conceived the idea that she would make him happy as his wife, it had gone on growing upon him with all the weight of love. He did not quite understand why he had loved her so dearly, but thus it was. Such a Mrs. Hugh Anderson, such a pair of horses in the boulevards, was to his imagination the most lovely sight which could be painted. Then Florence took the mode of disabusing him which had been told, and Hugh Anderson gave the required promise. Alas, in what an unfortunate moment had he done so! Such was his own thought. For though he was sure of his own attachment to her, he would not mount high enough to be sure of hers to somebody else. It was the sort of thing a man oughtn't to have been asked to promise, he said to the third secretary. And having so determined, he made up his mind to follow her to England and try his fortune once again. Florence had just wished Harry good-bye for the day, or rather for the week. She cared nothing now in the way of protestations of affection. Come, Harry, there now, don't be so unreasonable. Am not I just as impatient as you are? This day fortnight you will be back, and then there will be some peace, won't there? But mind you, write every day. And so Harry was whisked away, as triumphant a man as ever left Cheltenham by the London train. On the following morning, Hugh Anderson reached Cheltenham and appeared at Montpellier Place. "My daughter is at home, certainly," said Mrs. Mountjoy. There was something in the tone which made the young man at once assure himself that he had better go back to Brussels. He had ever been a favorite with Mrs. Mountjoy. In his days of love-making, poor Mountjoy had been absent, declared no longer to have a chance at Tretton, and Harry had been the very evil one himself. Mrs. Mountjoy had been assured by the Brussels Mountjoys that with the view of getting well rid of the evil one, she had better take poor Anderson to her bosom. She had opened her bosom accordingly, but with very poor results, and now he had come back to look after what result there might be. Mrs. Mountjoy felt that he had better go back to Brussels. "Could I not see her?" asked Anderson. "Well, yes, you could see her." "Mrs. Mountjoy, I tell you everything, just as though you were my own mother. I have loved your daughter. Oh, I don't know how it is. If she'd been my wife for 2 years, I don't think I'd mind dying afterwards." "Oh, Mr. Anderson, I wouldn't. I never heard of a case where a girl's got such a hold of a man as she has of me." "You don't mean to say that she has behaved badly?" "Oh, no, she couldn't behave badly. It isn't in her, but she can bowl a fellow over with the most desperate manner. As for me, I'm not worth my salt since I first saw her. When I go to ride with the governor, I haven't a word to say to him." But this ended in Mrs. Mountjoy going and promising that she would send Florence down in her place. She knew that it would be in vain, but to a young man who had behaved so well as Mr. Anderson, so much could not be refused. "Here I am again," he said, very much like Punch in the pantomime. "Oh, Mr. Anderson, how do you do? A lover who is anxious to prevail with a lady should always hold up his head. Where is the writer of novels or of human nature who does not know as much as that? And yet the man who is in love, truly in love, does not hold up his head very high. It is the man who is not in love who does so. Nevertheless, it does sometimes happen that the true lover obtains his reward, and in this case it was not observed to be so." But now Mr. Anderson was sure of his fate, so that there was no encouragement of him to make any attempt at holding up his head. "Thanks for telling us all you know about true love, Tony." "I have come once more to see you," he said. "I am sure that it gives Mamma so much pleasure. Mrs. Mountjoy is very kind, but it hasn't been for her. The truth is, I couldn't settle down in this world without having another interview." "What am I to say, Mr. Anderson?" "I'll just tell you how it is, that's all. You know what my prospects are." She did not quite remember, but she bowed to him. "You must know because I told you. There is nothing I kept concealed." Again she bowed. "There can be no possible family reason for my going to Kamchatka." "Kamchatka?" "Yes, indeed. The F.O." The F.O. always meant the Foreign Office. "The F.O. wants a young man on whom it can thoroughly depend to go to Kamchatka. The allowances are handsome enough, but the allowances are nothing to me." "Why should you go?" "It is for you to decide. Yes, you can detain me. If I go to that bleak and barren desert, it will be merely to court exile for that quarter of the globe in which you and I would not live together and not separate. That I cannot stand. In Kamchatka, well, there is no knowing what might happen to me then." "But I am engaged to be married to Mr. Annesley." "You told me something of that before." "Yes, you did. She did, you blockhead. She's told you 100 times. "But it is all fixed. Mamma will tell you. It's to be this fortnight. If you'd only stay and come as one of my friends." "Surely such a proposition as this is the unkindest way that any young lady can make." "She wants him to come to the wedding." But we believe that it is not made unfrequently. In the present case, it received no reply. Mr. Anderson took up his hat and rushed to the door. Then he returned for a moment. "God bless you, Miss Mountjoy," he said. "In spite of the cruelty of that suggestion, I must bid God bless you." And then he was gone to Kamchatka. About a week afterwards, Mr. Grascour appeared upon the scene with precisely the same intention. So all these people from Brussels are following her to England. And in Mr. Anderson's case, we might say that he followed her because she's quite nice to look at, has a nice personality, a lot of spirit. In Mr. Grascour's case, it's the money that she's going to get when she reaches her majority. I think that is pretty fair to say. He, too, retained his memory of a most vivid recollection of a young lady and her charms. He had heard that Captain Scarborough had inherited Tretton, and had been informed that it was not probable that Miss Florence Mountjoy would marry her cousin. He was somewhat confused in his ideas, and thought that, were he now to appear on the scene, there might still be a chance for him. There was no lover more unlike Mr. Anderson than Mr. Grascour. Not even Florence Mountjoy. Not even to own her would he go to Kamchatka. And were he not to see her, he would simply go back to Brussels. And yet he loved her as well as he knew how to love anyone, and would she become his wife, would have treated her admirably. He had looked it all around and could see no reason why he should not marry her. Like a persevering man, he persevered, but as he did so, no glimmering of an idea of Kamchatka disturbed him. That line that Trollope gives us. He looked at it all around and could see no reason why he should not marry her. So perfectly encapsulates the mind frame of men like this. Of course, the reason is her. She doesn't want to marry you. That's the reason. That's reason enough. But from this further trouble, Mrs. Mountjoy was able to save her daughter. Mr. Grascour made his way into Mrs. Mountjoy's presence and there declared his purpose. He had been sent over on some question connected to the literature of commerce and had ventured to take the opportunity of coming down to Cheltenham. He hoped that the truth of his affection would be evinced by the journey. Mrs. Mountjoy had observed while he was making his little speech how extremely well brushed was his hat. She also observed that poor Mr. Anderson's hat was in such a condition as almost to make her try to smooth it down for him. "If you make objection to my hat, you should brush it yourself," she had heard Harry say to Florence, and Florence had taken the hat and had brushed it with fond, lingering touches. "Mr. Grascour, I can assure you that she is really engaged," Mrs. Mountjoy had said. Mr. Grascour bowed and sighed. "She is to be married this day week." "Indeed." "To Mr. Harry Annesley." "Oh, I remember the gentleman's name. I thought, Well, yes, there were objections, but they have luckily disappeared." Though Mrs. Mountjoy was only as yet happy in a melancholy manner, rejoicing with but bated joy at her girl's joys, she was too loyal to say a word now against Harry Annesley. The wedding is in a week. What are these guys still doing here? I should not have troubled you, but I'm sure of that, Mr. Grascour. We both of us are grateful to you for your good opinion. I know very well how high is the honor which you are doing Florence, and she will quite understand it. But you see, the thing is fixed. It's only a week away." Florence was said at that moment to be not at home, though she was upstairs, looking at 4 dozen new pocket handkerchiefs, which had just come from the pocket handkerchief merchant, with the letters F.A. upon them. She had much more pleasure in looking at them than she would have had in listening to the congratulations of Mr. Grascour. "He's a very good man, no doubt, Mamma, a deal better, perhaps, than Harry." That, however, was not her true opinion. But one can't marry all the good men. There was almost more trouble to be taken down at Buston about Harry's marriage than his sister's, though Harry was to be married at Cheltenham, and only his father and one of his sisters as a bridesmaid were to go down and assist upon the occasion. His father was to marry them, and his mother had at last consented to postpone the joy of seeing Florence till she was brought home from her travels, a bride 3 months old. Nevertheless, a great fuss was to be made, especially at Buston Hall. Mr. Prosper had become comparatively light in heart since the duty of providing a wife for Buston and a future mother for Buston heirs had been taken off his shoulders and thrown upon those of his nephew. The more he looked back upon the days of his own courtship, the more did his own deliverance appear to him to be almost the work of heaven. Where would he have been had Miss Thoroughbung made good her footing in Buston Hall? He used to shut his eyes and gently raise his left hand towards the skies as he told himself that this evil thing had passed by him. But it had passed by, and it was expected that there would be a lunch of some sort at Buston, and as, with all his diligent inquiry, he had heard nothing but good of Florence, she would be received with a hearty welcome as he could give her. There was one point which troubled him more than all the others. He was determined to refurnish the drawing-room and also the bedroom in which Florence was destined to sleep. He had told his sister in the most solemn manner that he had made up his mind at last thoroughly. The thing should be done. She understood how great a thing it was for him to do. "The 2 center rooms," he said, with an almost tragic air. Then he sent for her the next day and told her that, on further consideration, he had determined to add in the dressing-room. The whole parish felt the effect. It was not so much that the parish was struck by the expenditure proposed, because the squire was known to be a man who had not for years spent all his income, but that he had given way so far on behalf of a nephew whom he had lately been so anxious to disinherit. Rumor had already reached Buntingford of what the squire had intended to do on the receipt of his own wife, rumors which had of course since faded away into nothing. It had been positively notified to Buntingford that there should be really a new carpet and new curtains in the drawing-room. Miss Thoroughbung had been known to have declared at the brewery that the whole thing should have been done before. She had been there 12 months, so she'd have had it done herself. She'd have done up the place if she'd only been accepted. But no, she will never set foot in the house. Or maybe she will. Probably not when Uncle Prosper is alive. But, you know, she's the aunt of the husband of one of Harry's sisters. He shall go the whole hog, she had said, and there had been a little bet about it between her and her brother, who entertained an idea that Mr. Prosper was an obstinate man. And Joe had brought tidings on the bet to the parsonage, so that there had been much commotion on the subject. When the best room had been included, then the dressing room, even Matthew had been alarmed. "It'll come as much as £500, he whispered to Mrs. Annesley. Matthew seemed to think that it was quite time that there should be somebody to control his master. "Why, ma'am, it's only the other day, because I can remember it myself, when that Ludable came to the house news." Matthew had been in place over 20 years. When Mrs. Annesley reminded him that fashions were changed and that other kinds of tables were required, he only shook his head. The loo table is the word I stumbled over. Is that it's been there for so long, maybe they need a new one. But there was a question more vital than that of expense. How was the new furniture to be chosen? In the final chapter of a 600-page novel, this is what it sounds like when Trollope is wasting time. When he himself is reluctant to go or is making word count for the final installment. The first idea was that Florence should be invited to spend a week at her future home and go up and down to London with either Mrs. Annesley or her brother and select the furniture herself. But there were reasons against this. Mr. Prosper would like to surprise her by the munificence of what he did, and the suggestion of one day was sure to wane before the stronger lights of the next. Mr. Prosper, though he intended to be munificent, was still a little afraid that it should be thrown away as a thing of course, or that it might appear to have been Harry's work. That would be manifestly unjust. "I think I had better do it myself," he said to his sister. "Perhaps I could help you, Peter." He shuddered, but it was at the memory of the sound of that word Peter, as it had been blurted out for his express annoyance by Miss Thoroughbung. "I wouldn't mind going up to London with you." He shook his head, demanding still more time for deliberation. Were he to accept his sister's offer, he would be bound by his acceptance. "It's the last drawing-room carpet I shall ever buy," he said to himself, with true melancholy, as he walked back home across the park. Then there had been the other grand question of the journey or not down to Cheltenham. In a good-natured way, Harry had told him that the wedding would be no wedding without his presence. That had moved him considerably. It was very desirable that the wedding should be more than merely a legal wedding. The world ought to be made aware of the heir to Buston had been married in the presence of the Squire of Buston. But the journey was tremendous difficulty. If he could have gone from Buston direct to Cheltenham, it would have been comparatively easy, but he must pass through London, and to do this must travel the whole way between northern and western railway stations, and the trains would not fit. He studied his Bradshaw for an entire morning and found that they would not fit. "Where am I to spend an hour and a quarter?" he asked his sister mournfully. "Then there would be 4 journeys, going and coming, 4 separate journeys." "You're welcome to travel by train, Peter." And these would be irrespective of the numerous carriages and cabs. It was absolutely impossible he should be present in the flesh on that happy day at Cheltenham. He was left at home for 3 months, July, August, and September, in which to buy the furniture, which, however, was at last procured by Mr. Annesley. The marriage, as far as the wedding was concerned, was not nearly as good fun as that of Joe and Molly. There was no Mr. Crabtree there, and no Miss Thoroughbung. And Mrs. Mountjoy, though she meant to do it all as well as could be done, was still joyous only with bated joy. Some tinge of melancholy still clung to her. She had for so many years thought of her nephew as the husband destined for her girl, but she could not as yet demonstrate her appreciation of Harry Annesley. "I have no doubt we shall come to be true friends, Mr. Annesley," she said to him. "Don't call me Mr. Annesley." "No, I won't. When you come back again and I am used to you, but at present there is something." "A regret, perhaps?" "Well, not quite a regret. I'm an old-fashioned person, and I can't change my manners all at once. You know what it was I used to hope." "Oh, yes. But Florence was very stupid and would have a different opinion." "Of course I am happy now. Her happiness is all the world to me, and things have undergone a change." "That's true. Mr. Prosper has made over the marrying business to me, and I mean to go through it like a man. Only you must call me Harry." This she promised to do, and did in the seclusion of her room give him a kiss. But still her joy was not loud, and the hilarity of her guests was moderated. Mrs. Armitage did her best, and the bridesmaids' dresses were pretty, which is all that was required of a bridesmaid. Then at last the farthest carriage came, and they were carried away to Gloucester, where they were committed to were they committed to an untender, commonplace, but much more comfortable mercies of the railway carriage. Then we will part with them and encounter them again but for a few moments, as after a long day's ramble they made their way back to a solitary but comfortable hotel among the Bernese Alps. Florence was on a pony, which Harry had insisted on hiring for her, though Florence had declared herself able to walk the whole way. It had been very hot, and she was probably glad of the pony. Pony's not so happy. It's hot for him, too. But anyway. They had both alpenstocks in their hands, and on the pommel of her saddle hung the light jacket which he had started, and which had not been so light, but then he had been glad to ease himself of the weight. The guide was lagging behind, and the two were close together. "Well, old girl," he said, "and now what do you think of it all?" "I'm so very much older than I was when you took me, pet." "Oh, yes, you are. Half of your life is gone. You have settled down into the cares and duties of married life, none of which had been so much thought of when I took you." "Not thought of? They have been on my mind ever since that night at Mrs. Armitage's." "Only in a romantic and therefore untrue sort of manner. Since that time you have always thought of me with a white choker and dress boots." "Don't flatter yourself. I never looked at your boots." "You knew that they were boots and the clothes of a man making love, didn't you? I don't care personally very much about my own boots. I shall never care about another pair, but I should care about them, anything that might give me the slightest assistance." Nothing was wanted. It had all been done, Harry. "My pet, but still a pair of high-lows heavy with nails would not have been efficacious then. I should think I love him, you might have said to yourself, but he is such an awkward fellow." If he'd worn the wrong boots. It had gone much beyond that with Mrs. Armitage's. "But now you have taken my high-lows as part of your duty." "And you?" "When a man loves a woman, he falls in love with everything belonging to her. You don't wear high-lows. Everything you possess is specially of your own, as it has to administer to my sense of love and beauty." I wish it might be so." "There is no danger at all about that, but I have come before you on occasion such as this as a kind of navvy, and you must accept me." She glanced round furtively to see whether their guide was looking, but the guide had gone back out of sight, for, sitting on her pony, she had her arm round his neck and kissed him. "And then there is ever so much more," he continued. I don't think I snore." "Indeed, no. There isn't a sound comes from you. I sometimes look to see if I think you are still alive." "But if I do, you'll have to put up with it. That would be one of your duties as a wife. You never could have thought of that when I had those dress boots on." "Of course I didn't. How can you talk such rubbish?" "I don't know whether it is rubbish. Those are the kinds of things that must fall upon a woman so heavily. Suppose I were to beat you." "Beat me?" "Yes, hit you over the head with this stick." "I'm sure you would not do that." "So am I, but suppose I were to. Your mother used to tell of my leaving that poor man bloody and speechless," meaning Montjoy Scarborough. "What if I were to carry out my usual habits as then shown? Take care, my darling, or that brute'll throw you." This he said as the pony stumbled over a stone. "Almost as unlikely as you are. One has to risk dangers in the world, but one makes risk as little as possible. I know they won't give me a pony that will tumble down, and I know that I've told you to look to see that they don't. You chose the pony, but I had to choose you. I don't know very much about ponies, but I do know something about a lover, and I know that I've got one that will suit me." So Trollope ends this novel with more billing and cooing on a country road in the Bernese Alps. Two young lovers that are so blissfully happy with each other that they barely spare a thought for Montjoy Scarborough, that fellow. They barely spare a thought for him. They don't spare a thought for Tretton Park either, or for any events of the book. It's kind of amazing when you think of that is the final chapter of our book. We are now done with our read-along of Mr. Scarborough's family, and look at that final chapter. That final chapter would have happened without any of the rest of the book, without the plot of Mr. Scarborough's family, without the plot of the marriages and the marriage certificates. That would have happened anyway. It's kind of amazing that is the note that Trollope ends this on. I guess he has to do it that way. And also, you generally want to leave people with a smile. The reason that Trollope does these long falling actions is to secure the affection of his readers and make them want the next Trollope novel. unbeknownst to him, or maybe beknownst to him, considering how he writes about old Mr. Scarborough, there wasn't going to be much. There were a couple of other items, in his larder, but nothing on the scale or the brilliance of this. And that is the story. And what do we have for all of our trouble? Well, the main bulk of the story was this fight over the entail at Tretton Park, and it turns out to mean nothing. It turns out to mean nothing at all. The whole thing was a humbug. The whole thing was a ruse created by Mr. Scarborough to clear the property of debt. But why? To save it, because he's so proud of having built it. But he didn't save it. Montjoy inherits it, and Montjoy is an inveterate gambler. It will be gone in a year. We don't ever learn that. We don't know. That's where the novel ends, so we don't ever know that. But nevertheless, there are some glowing parts here. And they revolve, as Trollope doesn't always do, but to most effect does, around the issue of marriage. Not just happy marriages and unhappy ones, but also marriages avoided. Florence Montjoy spends the whole book avoiding bad marriages. And Dolly Gray avoids a bad marriage. But the main gist here is that we end with two happy weddings. Joe Thoroughbung and Harry Annesley's sister, and Harry Annesley and Florence Montjoy. The two happy relations. That's, I think, why we get this final scene the way it is our two lovers so understanding each other and so loving each other that he can joke about beating her. They're just laughing with each other. They have won through in the end. I imagine that Trollope wanted to end it that way, to leave a smile on the face of his readers. And I certainly had a blast. I've been thanking you all throughout this read along, but I want to thank you again here at the end for how much fun this has been. How much incredible fun this has been. All sorts of theories have been bounced around as to why I've said it's so much fun to read Trollope out loud because his books are all told by somebody. Not so heavily in this book. In fact, almost not at all. I can only think of one place in the whole book where there is the question of a narrator. But also because there's a magic to reading things out loud, especially once you allow me the courtesy of interrupting myself a million times, which you've all not only allowed but encouraged. That's another thing that's been bounced around in the course of this read aloud that has not been as loud in other read alouds that I've done, which is that a number of you have said that over the years you've made mention of the fact that you have taught, and you have said over and over again that when you taught books in classrooms for young people, it was not possible that there would be anyone in the room who wasn't interested. Once I had got rid of the people who were just there to be not interested. Their whole purpose was to disrupt and not to care. Once I got rid of them on the first day of class by telling them bye, maybe not the first day, but the first week. After the first week, I would be able to say, you, and you're out. You're not in this classroom anymore. Have your parents' lawyer complain to my boss. It's not going to do you any good. You're not here to learn. You're not here to talk. You're not here to teach me anything. You're not here to do any of the work. You're just here to make yourselves asses. So you're gone. Once I did, a number of you said that, I have always said that after that core of people were gone, there wouldn't be any uninvolved students at all. Because we'd be in it together, and we'd be having lots of fun, and there wouldn't be any condescension or punitive lack of parity or anything like the stuff that usually plagues academia. And a number of you in the weeks that have been reading this book have said, I wasn't really sure what you meant by that, but now I know what you mean by that. And you're absolutely right. I would never have thought that I would like this book or that I would see so much in it if we weren't reading it together. That has felt wonderful. I haven't quite known what to make of that. But in other words, what I'm trying to say here at the end here is thank you. This was a tremendously fun experience. You would think that since it was such tremendous fun, I would have taken the bare minimum precaution of deciding what we're going to read out loud next. And I have not done that. I have not done that. So we're going to take a break from reading things out loud for a week. While I decide what I want to read to you next. And I'll make the announcement. We'll give it plenty of time. It, of course, will be a book that's out of copyright. I would love it if I could get an author to agree to let me read their more contemporary work out loud. But I'm pretty sure that even if the author said yes, the lawyers might say no. The copyright holder might say no. I would love it if I could read Frank Conroy's Body and Soul out loud to you. I don't want to scream over this, so hang on. I would love it if I could read that, Body and Soul, or Moving On by Larry McMurtry would be great. But it'll be a book that's out of copyright, so it'll be not only free on Project Gutenberg, but also easily gettable in an Oxford Classic or a Penguin Classic. I just haven't decided what it's going to be yet. That's all. But I'm not going to stop doing this. I absolutely love doing this. Now that you agree that I can do it the way I want, that I can interrupt myself and have fun and joke around. Now that you've agreed that I can do that, we're off to the races. We'll never stop reading books out loud together. So thank you for Mr. Scarborough's family. I will wrap this up, and we will recommence with another book down the line a bit. So I'll see you all then. Thank you, BookTube.